So basically, today's learning lunch is all about a book called The 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma. And when I first heard about this book, I thought it was just a book that was going to be very much how to kind of essentially get up early in the morning and do stuff in the morning. And underlying that is what this book is about, but it's a very different book to what I thought it was going to be. It's based around, so it's all written around the story of an entrepreneur, a very successful entrepreneur, and an artist and another entrepreneur that kind of are guided by the entrepreneur or business tycoon as he is, with the help of a guy called the Spellbinder, who is essentially a business guru. Now, Robin Sharma is not going to win any literary awards for his storytelling. So it's one of those books where all of the learning is based around the story. And I have to admit, the first time I read this book, I got about 3 or 4 chapters in and was like, oh my God, this is awful. I just can't read this book because it's just such a rubbish and tacky story. But anyway, I persevered, got to the end of the book, and it's probably the first book I've ever read where I just got to the end of it and went, I've got to go back and start again and read. There's so much good advice in there. I read it a second time straight after reading it the first time. So if you do decide to read this book, don't let the principles or kind of the storytelling and the rubbish storytelling of Robin Sharma get in the way, because it's almost like he's taken all of the best personal development books and rolled them into one story. And there's just so many brilliant takeaways from it that I would definitely encourage you to read it. And, like I said, even though, I'm going to share with you some of the ideas today, I think it's the sort of book that every time you read it, you'll pick up some more ideas and some more life lessons within there. But ultimately, it is about saying that, that getting up early is an incredibly powerful thing. And Robin Sharma says that the 5 a.m. is the time of least distraction, highest human glory, and greatest peace. And ultimately, what he talks about in this book is the fact that successful people rise early. And essentially, if you want to gain peace and solitude, you want to increase your productivity and focus, and you want to enhance your well-being and health, one of the best ways to do it is to get up early. Now, this book isn't just about getting up early. Actually, the time that you get up is somewhat, as the book goes on, it becomes apparent that is largely irrelevant. It's what you do as a result of getting up early that is the most important thing. But he does say that if you want to achieve in the top 5%, you've got to be willing to do what 95% of people won't do. And getting up early is about creating this hour at the start of the day for you to focus on the most important things. We've talked about it in the trusted team before about how, if when you're planning your goals or planning your week or whatever it is, you've got to put the most important things in first, because that way all of the other stuff fits around it. You put the rocks in the jar first, then after the rocks, you can still fit in the pebbles, you can still fit in the sand, and you can still fit in the water. But if you put the water in first, you'll never get the rocks or the pebbles in. And so you've got to put the first things in your life, your week, and particularly your day first. And that is essentially what the 5 a.m. Club is all about. So that's what we want to kind of focus on a little bit over the course of the next sort of half an hour or so. But one of the things that I really love about this book is that it kind of ties in really well with some of the other books that we've talked about, like Atomic Habits, in that it's essentially talking about the fact that small increments, small changes, small gradual changes have a much bigger impact over time. And Robin Sharma talks about the fact that there's 4 focuses on the history makers of the world. And he talks about capitalization IQ, which is essentially making the most of your opportunities, freedom from distraction. So in the last Trusted Team workshop, which I know you weren't in, Kenny, but you can, once you're fully signed up, and you can catch up on that in the portal. we did a piece on how productivity and avoiding distraction and becoming indistractable is really important. And so freedom from distraction is one of the focuses of history makers, according to Robin Sharma in this book. Fanatic discipline, which is about doing what you said that you're going to do, and also relentless obsession to produce iconic work is what he talks about. But one of the things I like about the 5 a.m. Club is there's kind of lots of little models within it, like we've talked about in the framework formula, another module that we've already done, and you'll have recorded access to, Kenny, in one of the previous workshops. So there's lots of examples of little models, and I'm going to show you some of those over the course of this presentation. One of the things, again, that ties into what we've talked about elsewhere as well, is that he talks about how the magic of life happens when we step outside our comfort zone. And know we've kind of reiterated that before, but it's just another example of how this is another piece that's being taken from, it's another chunk or focus of the 5 a.m. Club that we see spoken about in other areas. So in the 5 a.m. Club, he talks about the fact that there's 5 key rules. And it's worth kind of bearing these rules in mind and kind of taking heed of them. So the first is an addiction to distraction is the end of your creative production. So this again ties in with coming back to being indistractable and finding ways to stop yourself being distracted. So empire makers and history creators take 1 hour for themselves before dawn in the serenity that lies beyond the clutches of complexity to prepare themselves for a world-class day. So this is what we're going to come on to in terms of how we can use that first hour, as he calls it, the victory hour, to set ourselves up for an incredible world-class day. Rule 2 is that excuses breed no genius. Just because you haven't installed the early rising habit before doesn't mean you can't do it now. Release your rationalizations and remember that small daily improvements, when done consistently over time, lead to stunning results. So just because you haven't you're not getting up at 5:30 in the morning at the moment, you wouldn't, if you're getting up at 7 o'clock at the moment, I would encourage you not to just start going straight for 5 o'clock or 5:30 or whatever it is. I would encourage you to gradually increase set the alarm earlier and build your way up to that. I actually settled on 5:30 just because Mrs. Redding would have insisted that I slept in a different room if it was any earlier than that. 5:30 was the compromise that we've sort of seemed to have landed on. Rule 3 is all about the fact that all change is hard at first, messy in the middle, and gorgeous at the end. So everything you now find easy, you first found difficult. With consistent practice, getting up with the sun will become your new normal and automatic. But this applies to anything that we want to change in our life. And I'll come back to this rule in terms of the fact that it's messy, hard at first, messy in the middle, and gorgeous at the end over the course of this presentation. Rule 4 is about to have the results that the top 5% producers have, you must start doing what 95% of people are unwilling to do. As you start to live like this, the majority will call you crazy. Yep, plenty of people seem to call me crazy. But remember that being labeled a freak is the price of greatness. And it is ultimately about doing what most people aren't. If you want to achieve what most people won't achieve, you've got to be willing to do what most people won't do. And then rule 5, which he in 5 a.m. Club, is when you feel like surrendering, continue. Triumph loves the relentless. So just when you kind of think that, I mean, it's like that the darkest hour is before dawn. When you think it's becoming just too difficult to carry on, that's the point at which you're almost at the breakthrough stage. So within the book, Robin talks about the 4 interior empires, and those are mindset, heart set, soul set, and health set. Mindset obviously is all about the psychology. I love, actually, whilst I really like what he talks about in 5M Club around mindset, I actually think Carol's Dweck book called Mindset is a better book on that particular element that she talks about. She was the inventor of the terms fixed mindset and growth mindset. And adapting a growth mindset in life will, which I know you guys have all got, but kind of continually finding ways to stay in a growth mindset is really empowering. So we've got to be in the right mindset, also, a growth mindset, but also a positive mindset. So that's one of his four, what did I call them? What did he call them? Interior empires. Next is heart set, so emotionality. So heart set is your emotional well-being. To cultivate a healthy emotional life, you need to express ourselves and have healthy emotional attachments. This is vital to our success. So it's all about dealing with emotional baggage and the importance of processing past traumas for personal growth. So we want to think about, and this kind of, it falls into tune with the way that I've got you building your goals out in terms of having health-focused goals, having family-focused goals, et cetera, et cetera. It's about building your goals around these most important areas. Health set. Clearly, I've said before, if we don't make time for our health, we better make time for illness later on. So health set refers to your physical health. One of the best ways to get ahead in life is to live longer, but also to have a better health span as well as not just a lifespan. So that's stuff that we're going to continue to go through in the Trusted Team workshops. If you want to be in charge of your empire, you need to live long enough to do this. Committing to exercise will help you get much more out of your life. I know I'm preaching to the converted here, particularly as Kenny is training for his next Ironman. Just, can you remind me how old you are, just to give people a little bit of reference to that?
Well, that's me just into my 64th year now.
Excellent. So, and training for which Ironman will this be? Which number will this be?
The one in Portugal. So it's I mean, the whole thing for me is just a 1% triathlon and 99% journey. Chaz, you know all about that, and I'm just enjoying the wellness of it all, and the
Brilliant.
privilege of having the health to try. I couldn't really care much about the actual event. I don't mean that, you know what I mean, but just actually to be there, and so fingers crossed we'll get there and hopefully finish the same day we start.
Brilliant. You will get it done, I'm sure. But that's awesome. But so this is really important. It's a really important part of the journey is and the focus of the 5 a.m. club is about making sure that we've got the best health set. Finally, he talks about the soul set, which was the bit that is about our spirituality, probably the bit that I struggled with most. Whatever you believe, make time in the morning to connect with your spirituality and yourself. Remember all of the things that make you who you are and why you are doing what you do. So too often we get caught up in the superficiality of life and forget to connect with ourselves deeply. So he breaks life down into those 4 internal empires. And I think it's a really lovely way of, again, making sure that we're kind of setting ourselves up for success in each of these different empires, because, and ultimately that's what the 5 a.m. club is all about. He also talks about how we create habits and how the lifetime habit arc is very much in tune with the Atomic Habits by James Clear, which we did on a previous learning lunch. Or we did it in the workshop. I can't remember, one or the other. We did habits in the workshop, didn't we? That's how we've included that. So it's all about finding the trigger, then creating the ritual around it, then understanding the reward around it, and then it's the repetition. And he says that really to lock in a habit, it takes 66 days. So that's where it's hard for the first 22 days. Messy for the next 22 days, and then you get the bliss and success after the final 22 days, and that's where it basically becomes automatic. So when it comes to getting up at in the 5 a.m. club or at 5:30 for me, it certainly was hard work at the start. Then it kind of didn't happen every time in the middle, but then once I got into the habit of this, I think I've told you this before, but I've got an amazing photo of the North Cornish coastline on New Year's Day a few years ago. So it's not very often that we get snow on the Cornish coastline, but I was up to see the sunrise on New Year's Day, because that's what, my body was just now in a ritual of getting up at 5:30 every day, and it's just brilliant, even when it's New Year's Day. So if you get up early enough, you can create, and it doesn't really matter what time it is, but you can create what he calls the 20-20-20 formula. So his approach is to move for 20 minutes, so get some physical activity to awaken the body. Next, to reflect for 20 minutes. So that's about meditation, journaling, planning, that sort of stuff. And the last 20 minutes is about growth. So learning, reading, or listening to educational content. Now, as I think I've told you before, I chose to change this around a little bit. So for me, I try and get all of these for 1 hour. So, or no, that's not quite true. So because I'm training for Ironmans like Kenny, I want an hour's worth of exercise first thing in the morning as a minimum. So I will be, if I'm doing an hour's run, then I'll do the full hour as a run, but I will, in the growth part, I will be listening to a book, which I know, and I know, Ian, you're doing this, kind of going out for your early morning walk, listening to a book. You're getting that growth, which is one of our 6 human needs, and something that that's some 6 human needs I will go through in more detail at the next Trusted Team workshop. But we get one of our 6 human needs by continual growth, which is a really important, it's one of the human needs that we need to be truly happy. But it's also worth trying to think how you can get some time in meditation, journaling, reflection into that morning routine as well. So for me, actually, what I'm finding working really, really well on this is, and I found journaling's worked well for me in the past, but at the moment I found only a 5-minute meditation, but a brilliant 5-minute meditation in the Headspace app. So I'm adding the 5-minute of meditation to an hour of exercise while listening to a book if I'm running, or if I'm cycling outdoors. If I'm cycling indoors, I'll watch a documentary or a TED Talk or TED Talks or those sorts of things. But that, to me, is how I deliver the 20-20 formula. It's up to you whether you like to do it like Robin suggests and do 20 minutes of exercise, 20 minutes of reflection, 20 minutes of growth, or you want to combine them in ways like that. But essentially what he's saying is, what you want from the move part is you want some intense exercise, get some sweat generated. Again, it's about learning in that aspect too, hydrating and breathing deeply. Reflection is about whether it's journaling, meditating, planning, praying, whatever it is that works for you in that, but just something to give you the opportunity to reflect. And growth might be reading or listening to books. It might be listening to podcasts. It might be watching TED Talks, whatever it is. It could be studying for the next exam, anything that allows you to make sure that you're growing on a daily basis. And one of the things that he talks about in this book is the twin cycles of elite performance. And this really is very much in tune with Ironman training or any type of training for endurance stuff. So he talks about the twin cycles of elite performance being the importance of balancing high exertion periods with deep rest periods. And essentially what he's saying is, it's like when you're training to run a marathon or do an Ironman. You want really intense activity that works you really hard, but you also need really good rest, because actually it's when it's in those periods of recovery that your body actually takes the steps forward. If you don't allow it to recover properly, then you just end up driving yourself into a hole. So having these really kind of intense periods, whether that's mental work, whether that's physical exercise, whatever it is, you have kind of periods of time where you work really hard, and then you also have the periods of time where you take proper recovery, and that applies both physically and mentally. So one of the things that he's very clear on in the 5 a.m. Club is this is not about sleeping less. So he still thinks you need your essential 8 hours of sleep. Now, for me, that's 7.5 hours, but that's but he talks about the 8 hours of sleep. If we did when we did the learning lunch on sleep, we kind of looked at the 90-minute cycle. So for me, that's the 7.5 hours. But he actually builds a whole routine around kind of what that kind of pre-bed routine should look like. Obviously, you can take as much or as little of the advice of this as you want. But he's saying last meal of the day should be between 7 and 8. I would say for better sleep, you want it to be before 7. And ideally closer to 6, because that one of the things I've learned from the Oura Ring data is that the later I eat, the poorer the quality of my sleep. But from that point, from 7 p.m. onwards, all devices turned off, and trying to avoid overstimulation. From 8 till 9, it's time for sort of conversations with loved ones. Kind of, you might do some meditation, that sort of stuff. And then 9 till 10 is about kind of dark rooms, away from blue screens of any sort, and kind of gearing up for a good night's sleep. So it really is about kind of conditioning yourself so that you get great sleep, but then you're up early in the morning. And, you know, it kind of ties in actually very well with the science behind Matt Walker's Why We Sleep as well. So whilst the 5 a.m. Club is not the book to read if you want to learn how to sleep for sure, or get better sleep, I originally thought when I started reading it that it was a book that was going to cost me sleep. I was going to essentially be encouraging me to sleep less, but it definitely isn't. And it's very much in tune with trying to make sure you get the right amount of sleep and good quality sleep, but just still giving you that victory hour in the morning. And the magic of the victory hour is nobody else is up. You know, if I don't get up early and try and go off and do my hours exercise once everybody's up, it tends to be that it's more inconvenient for the family. It's less likely to happen. Something's likely to go wrong. If I try and do my exercise in the evening as opposed to the morning, you know, I might get bogged down with work, or I might feel tired, or somebody might persuade me to go out for a beer. There's so much stuff that gets in the way of it when you put it in the evening. If it's done in the morning, you've basically done the most important stuff first thing. It's very much a book that's all about learning and constant growth. I know we've talked about it, talked about the learning library and kind of finding more and more books and more opportunities to continue that growth. But it really is a book that focuses on the importance of continual self-education and kind of dedication to personal growth and development. So it's very much in tune with what we're doing at the Trusted Team. But then, given that Robin Sharma is essentially a coach as well, you'd expect that to be the case. But I think ensuring that you use that morning to continue to learn and grow is an incredibly powerful thing. One of the other things that I really kind of the last piece of the jigsaw for the 5 a.m. Club, which I really loved, was it kind of talks about how these small habits are how we hit our goals. You know, I think historically I would have thought, before I read this book, I probably would have been a victim of thinking that it's what the big things that we do occasionally that allow us to hit our goals. Whereas actually what it really made me realize was it's the little things that we do often or every day that really are how we hit our goals. And the best example I can give you of that is when I did my first Ironman, because actually I read the 5 a.m. Club while I was training for my first Ironman, and it was kind of a good chunk of time before. I was probably reading this first in about June of that year, and the Ironman was in September, and it was Ironman Italy. And I read this book, and I was like, do you know what? If I follow the principles of this book, this Ironman suddenly has become, I'd got it in my head that it was a massive thing to do, but this book just gave me the incredible tools to do it and make it actually really quite easy. You know, that having that extra hour at the start of the day kind of made fitting the training in really easy. It wasn't costing me time where I would be able to kind of learn and grow and things like that, because I was doing it at the same time. And the same could be applied for, you know, if your big goal was to write a book, for example, by giving yourself that opportunity at the start of the day to kind of clear your head, get moving, you've then put yourself in a way better position to get on and write that book. So it's about creating that habit of doing little and often, as opposed to thinking that, you know, hitting the goals that we set is all about, you know, the thing, you know, for example, going back to the Ironman example, it's not about doing the one big run once a week that gets you to do an Ironman. It's the training every day and getting up to do so that is what gets you there. So I think it's a really brilliant book in terms of just kind of making you realize that actually it's the things that we do little and often. So I'll leave you with a quote from Robin Sharma from the book, which is essentially, if you take excellent care of the front end of your day, the rest of the day will take care of itself. And I really believe that. I think if you create that victory hour of learning, exercising, and reflecting at the start of the day, before anyone else is disturbing you, before you're distracted by anything else, before you're kind of getting bogged down into work or emails or anything like that, then you set yourself up for an amazing day. And I know, you know, and sometimes it's not easy. Last night we'd got friends invited us over for drinks, and so I had probably a couple too many glasses of rosé, really, for my own good. Then we'd got shooting star. You know, we've got this thing going on at the moment, so it's much easier there's lots of shooting stars around. So the girls wanted to stay up and see them. So I was way later to bed than I would normally be, and I was going to bed not in the perfect shape, having had a few too many glasses of wine, but I was still up shortly after 5:30. I was still in the pool by 6:30. I'd done a tough swim, came back, and I was like, wow, given that I should be tired, I feel amazing because of that. So I'd really encourage you to do that. So that is the 5M Club. I think it's a brilliant book if you can push aside the crap narrative that it surrounds. There's so much brilliant advice within there. I would desperately encourage you to read it. It's actually, if you kind of don't get caught up in the very average storytelling, there's just so much good advice in there.